Praise be to Jesus Christ, and welcome to Catholic Forum. I'm your guest host, Alan Dunst, and we want to thank you for being with us today. And we hope that our conversation here in West Michigan finds you wherever you may be and draws you closer to Jesus Christ through His one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the work of the laity. Many times we think of missions of the church such as evangelization and catechesis, and we almost, sometimes can default and think in terms of the ordained or consecrated religious being responsible for that. And it may surprise some to know that that's actually, by and large, our job. And so we're going to be talking with a couple of gentlemen who have actually embraced that responsibility and have really done amazing things here in West Michigan through their apostolate called Catechetical Foundations. So I want to introduce you to Mark Postma.
Yeah, nice to see you, Alan.
And Mike Tober.
Nice to meet you, Alan.
Good to have you with us. Thank you so much. And you gentlemen have been doing Catechetical Foundations for about how long? How long has it been in existence?
Roughly 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah. It started at Mike's kitchen table, actually.
Okay.
And I guess the Catechetical Foundations, you could say, got its foundation. I was working in a parish at the time, and I'd finish up grad school, and the thought sparked into my mind when I was in an RCIA class, a college course with my master's degree, and the light bulb started to go on for me as far as the pedagogy of handing on the faith. And that sparked me to create some training materials for an RCIA team.
Okay.
And I created an entire program for our catechists. And within the year, I ended up passing this material on to Mike. I saw him after Mass, and I said, Mike, check this out. I think you might like it. And a week or two later, we got in contact, and here we are today. It started the kitchen table meetings, as we like to call them.
Okay. So, Mike, what were you doing at that time that he passed you the information? Were you working in catechesis?
I was also serving in the church. I was working for a priest who I still fondly remember, Father Tony Vajnovich. And he's now retired in our diocese, but at the time he was pastor of St. Mary's Church in Spring Lake.
Okay.
And I was serving that parish in the capacity of youth ministry, directing the youth ministry. So Mark was at Mass one day, and he saw me saying my prayers, and
I have no idea why, but I had the material with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I took it and I read it, and I thought it was amazing, and that's what started the ball rolling.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. How did things proceed from that idea that, I've got some materials, I like the idea, got together, and how did it grow from there?
I don't know if I remember all those early details, but it started off with one course that we had, and we started to develop an online course, started to sit down and do some audio recordings, started writing reflections on some of the different catechetical and evangelization documents, such as Catechesis Tradendae, an apostolic exhortation by John Paul II in 1979. We wrote a series of reflections on that and started getting those out on the website. And we just started getting our name out there. There are different priests we know, DREs, and just started doing a lot of 2-hour training sessions, 1-hour speaking events, things of that nature.
Okay. Oh, interesting. And so, since we mentioned it, what is the website so people can
It's just
look it up?
catfoundations.com.
Catfoundations.com.
Correct.
Okay, very good.
Catechetical is too hard to spell.
That's, so. Yeah. I think you chose the right option.
Yeah, you bet.
So that's awesome. And we encourage people to check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a simple site, so be merciful.
But I know that you've grown beyond simply teaching catechesis for DREs and that kind of thing. What does the scope of your ministry include now?
Oh, well, originally it was just born of that conviction that this is what needs to be done in the church. Through our work, I think Mark and I have realized there quite often seems to be somewhat of an aversion to the work of catechesis, or maybe even a lack of knowledge what that is. And because we both have been so involved in the ministry of the church, the growth of the ministry came about because that conviction and that work was so deep in us, that those that are doing the work of evangelization had the right tools and the right knowledge to hand on the deposit of faith. And I know when this show began, you talked about the one true Holy Catholic Church. Well, a catechist hands on those truths. And so that's the work of catechesis. It aids that evangelization. It grew because we wanted to get the word out. Some people were really hungry for that. Certainly we had connections because we've grown up in this area, so we know people working in the church. And it sort of began there. The work has taken a larger scope through the monthly Authenticum lectures, which is something that Catechetical Foundations organized and began. Those take place at Sacred Heart Parish in Grand Rapids. And then our Day for Catechists, which is a day-long series of workshops for any catechist, priest, religious, youth minister, DRE, layman, anyone that wants to grow in that.
School teacher.
Can come to those days, and all of that work helps them get their certification in the Diocese of Grand Rapids. So
Now, you should mention that the Authenticum series, that's open to anybody.
Absolutely.
everything we do is open to anybody.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's the Day for Catechists. Even those who are interested in being a catechist, or perhaps it's my DRE approached me this year to fill in for Mrs. Jones who had her baby, and you're a live body, so can you help? You know, perhaps that person's just interested to see what's involved in getting trained, because it's a very serious task. It's a very serious responsibility as a catechist. It's vocational. It's not just a volunteer role. So that's open to anybody. Essentially anything we do, anybody can come, which is great.
And I think most people would agree that the catechesis in the church, particularly back in the late 60s, 70s, was not the best, and there was room for improvement. So, I mean, in terms of what you guys do, in terms of raising that bar and encouraging other people to hold themselves accountable to a higher standard, I think is a tremendous thing.
Yeah,
There's a great deal of work to be done, and you see more and more in our day organizations coming about that are fulfilling that task, from Father Barron, St. Paul Street Evangelization,
the Kino Institute, the Augustine Institute.
the Augustine Institute. I mean,
Franciscan.
there's that whole work of evangelization and catechesis is growing.
Yeah,
Sometimes
there's never been more resources available for someone who wants to learn more about the faith.
Yeah.
And so, but as you say, a lot of times the role of catechesis is often the volunteer role. The mom's got the child going through school and kind of gets roped into doing that type of thing. But to take it seriously and to really not to say that some of these ladies and gentlemen, I mean, I know gentlemen who are doing the same thing, and they just feel the need and the responsibility, the calling to, because it's we're seeing that the faith isn't being passed on as strongly as it probably could be, and so these people
and our culture needs it,
and it desperately
more than
needs
ever.
it.
And that's precisely why it's not being passed on as well, because it's been lost in our family life. We seem to have we have two different almost silo effects going on between just living our daily life, going to work, raising our family, going to sporting events, and doing all those those things we do as social people, and then we have the faith. And rather than integrating them into one life, we seem to separate them into different aspects of our life. And we see that a lot in catechesis too, where perhaps you mentioned the 60s and the 70s, and I think if we look at what was the good that came out of that, was there was a focus on living the faith rather than just knowing all the facts and doing what you want anyway. There's this emphasis on being a witness to the faith and actually knowing that how to live out, let's just say the Baltimore Catechism, to speak in a broad stroke. That was needed. I mean, I'm not that old to know the time, but that is needed. We need to both know the faith, orthodoxy, and we need to know how to practice that faith, orthopraxy. It's not one or the other, and that's
Right.
a lot of times what we get because we like to go to extremes or like to swing that pendulum back and forth. So we either get very hung up on one or the other.
Right.
There's some sort of comfort there because it's hard to do. It's hard to do it right. Life's difficult. It's hard to do it right. So
Sure.
it's easy to find almost an extreme zone to fall into, and that's true of catechesis, and of handing on the faith and of training the faith.
Sure.
So, but I think that speaks to authenticum, which Mike had that idea at one point
really?
and said it's
Okay.
time to do something like this because it speaks to the whole person. And I don't know if you want to speak on that, of how we got started with authenticum, was to focus on forming the person as a whole, focus on the good, the true, and the beautiful. So, we've
Yeah,
done
tell us
that.
a little bit more about that, how that started.
Well, it's there seems to be a negative attitude toward the church in our secular culture, and the prevailing view of a lot of people, and this comes from my teaching experience because I've taught students for years as well as I've seen an increasing growth in a negativity towards the church, and you see it more and more. You certainly see it within this country, where when someone thinks about the Catholic Church, they either have a negative view on it, or they think the Church espouses a negative view of man. And that couldn't be farther from the truth.
Right,
And
right.
so Authenticum was an idea that wanted to sort of kill that mentality and assist people in recognizing what the Catholic Church has actually fostered in civilization, that she has fostered what's good, what's true, what's beautiful. And so by sponsoring these lectures and inviting these very compelling people to come speak on the things that interest people right off the bat, the humanities, politics, they matter, religion, music, literature,
You've had architecture.
architecture. I mean,
Architecture
so
with
these
Duncan
things are,
Strike,
people are interested in this. But to deliver the lecture in such a way that one is able to see that the church, or someone who is profoundly Catholic, like Flannery O'Connor, for example, that they could really understand what drove that person to produce such marvelous work. And by doing that, it would allow us the avenue to encourage people to consider what the church is, what she offers man, and from that form friendships, which that's a huge part of Authenticum, is that the doors stay open as long as people want to be there.
Absolutely.
And people become friends. And by becoming friends, they become attached to the church. And there maybe a new doorway towards a vocation to hand on the faith happens. So it's a little bit roundabout, but it's one that's
It's slow, and that's good.
but we thought 30 people would show up. And over 100 people are there every month.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
far exceeded what we would have ever expected.
Yeah, it's been awesome. You talked a little bit about some of the guests. How do you bring in, because you have had some amazing guests.
Yes, we have.
And certainly you're drawing from some of our, we've got some talented people over at like Aquinas College and that kind of thing.
There's a lot of talent in Grand Rapids itself, but it's connections and emails, sometimes phone calls, and that's how sometimes we seal the deal, is make that phone call and get that commitment.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of emails, and it's a lot of hashing out dates. A lot of it, I don't know, probably half of our bigger names have come through connections.
Connections, or just a cold call, just a willingness to invite. Father Z from Father Zulsdorf was nothing more than an email. I sent him an email and explained what Authenticum was, what the apostolate was, and those that are involved in this type of ministry in the church, I think they want to see these types of things be successful and reach as many people as possible. And so I think it strikes a chord with them. And while he wasn't willing to say, I'll be there next month, he was willing to say, I really like this, stay in touch with me.
Okay.
And so it took me a year and a half, but I stayed in touch. And by staying in touch, eventually
He arrived.
God's will. Yeah, but it's like that with some. Duncan Stroik was a cold call.
Oh, man.
I've never met the man.
He-
I sent him an email.
And he graciously and quick contact, and he was up here pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah. So
Huh.
it's you just do it.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah, when
just-
people hear about what we're doing with Authenticum, it's very simple. It is what it is. It's a good lecture, listened to with a room full of friends, and that's what it is, and that's what we strive for. Mike and I set it up most months by ourselves.
with some
Usually,
help, some good help.
There's usually a person or two every month who comes
Yeah.
and saves our butts when we're getting everything out on time. And then when we tear down, we just start tearing down at a certain point, and whoever jumps in, and then we usually sit down for an hour afterward with whoever's left. And we
Okay.
usually fill a table, and we sit down and have a drink and talk, and finish up an hour or
my.
so later. And it's patience, and it's
Yeah.
there's something very nice about slowing down
Uh-huh.
and just being with friends and listening to a great lecture and then talking about it afterward.
Now, do the guests kind of hang out afterwards as well? A lot of people would never have that kind of opportunity to interact with some of these types of guests that you
Sure.
have. And
Yeah,
that
and
must be
sometimes
quite
the guests stay for a while
Yeah.
too. Dr. Whalen, when he came from Hillsdale, he stayed until 11 o'clock that night almost.
Oh,
And he
wow.
drove back that night. And a few of the other people have done so as well.
And it's
but-
opened the doors for other parishes for us to go teach and work with their catechists as
excellent,
well. So,
excellent.
So those relationships happen too. And they're also produced, much like this show. We use a different medium, but we're also producing those lectures. And then those lectures go online, or they're available for anyone to pick up, to hand out, to continue to evangelize, to continue to inform, and to continue to help people understand how wonderful and what a gift the church has been to Western civilization.
Yeah, excellent. And actually, if things work out, I hope that we can work out something, like be able to show some stuff on our shows, kind of present it on your behalf as well.
Yeah, you bet.
Because I have attended some. It's a little difficult because we're on the first Thursday we record, and you do the lectures on the Thursday.
Well,
as
your
well.
dad's a pretty faithful attendee.
Yeah.
So
There
he
you
is,
go.
so.
Yeah, he passes on the CDs.
Oh, good.
So I do get it.
Yeah. And they're all on YouTube
And now
now,
we're
too.
gonna get to
Every single lecture is on YouTube. If you just search Authenticum, you'll find our channel.
Okay, excellent.
And they're all there, which is wonderful. Our video guy has got 26 I think videos now loaded up.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
Daniel he's the man. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're fortunate that he works on our crew once in a while
Oh,
too.
yeah.
So, let's. I want to ask you about, in terms of your work now. Are you? Is there any affiliation or accreditation with the diocese in terms of your filling that role?
Yeah, absolutely. So anything that we do at a parish or a day for catechists, we also have a training tract called the Newman Tract, which is a really comprehensive. I hesitate to say complete training because you've never done training. You just aren't. But I'll say it's a complete foundational training. But it's extensive. It's probably, close to 200 hours of training, all said and done, this particular tract, over 3 or 4 years.
My goodness.
And so that's a really good thing for school staffs to look into for continual training.
Sure.
But anything we do, whether it's coming in for an hour and doing a session, the Authenticum lectures, they all do count for catechist certification hours for the Diocese of Grand Rapids. I can't speak for any other diocese,
Sure.
but it all does. Not for college credit type of stuff.
Sure.
But some of the stuff we do counts for advanced theology, which I do still believe is a category that's necessary for paid staff, and it all counts for that as well if we do get that designation. But we always reach out to the diocese, to Sister Barbara Klein, to make sure that some of those lectures that we do or presentations would fit that criteria. I don't think we've ever had an issue with that, so it's pretty easy.
Awesome.
So
Excellent.
yeah, so everything's good to go if you're counting your hours. So.
Oh, excellent. So now, how far in advance are you typically booking for the Authenticum? Because, like you said, you're looking at a year and a half to get someone on the schedule. But usually
we're booked for the fall.
Okay.
Almost all.
Usually, at least for me, this doesn't always work, but I think Mark's pretty much there too. Is you try to book a year out. You really try to book a year out. Some of these people, their schedules they're tight, and so to be looking to the horizon to book them is smart. You never want to be booking a week out. That's not going to happen.
We have not had that yet.
No.
We've been maybe a month or a month and a half.
When we first started, we did have someone cancel, and that was when Dr. Fastigi came in, and
he's at Sacred Heart Seminary.
he's at Sacred Heart,
okay.
and so that
he had
was
a home run.
Yeah,
That was fantastic.
and that was about a month or so, but the person who canceled eventually came and fulfilled a different time slot later on. That was Dr. Deneen. So you know, sometimes those things happen, and you you just go at it, and but normally a year out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now we were talking a little bit, and you were mentioning kind of the difference between occupation and vocation.
Sure.
And you've since now you're not working with the church at this time. You've got a regular day job at this point.
I've got a day job. Yeah, I
I have a day job too.
Yeah.
But yours is at the church. So you're fortunate that you at least can got a reason to be reading the catechism in between during breaks. But Mark, you're working like I said, a regular day job, and how do you balance that vocation? We can talk about occupation, which kind of help you make your way through the world, but vocation is really what you do for God and what He's calling you to.
Right?
So
vocation's first, and so you're going to live that no matter what you do. We were talking a little bit before the show, and Mike made a good point, is you're always going to have your vocation, but your occupations will change. Or you may not have one for a time being, but your vocation doesn't change. So no matter what you're doing, it's kind of, intimated towards this before with those silo effects. My vocation, well, there's a few, right? I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm baptized, I'm in full communion with the church. So there's some inherent vocations there.
Indeed.
But I also have always felt a strong call since coming into the church to be part of evangelization and catechesis. And since that graduate class that I had with the RCIA class, very convicted to teach others how to hand on the faith. So for me, that's what I do in my spare time. So I don't watch TV. This is what I do in my spare time. It's my passion, it's my hobby, and I love it. I just don't ever put a book down. I don't ever put anything else in the way of it.
And in some ways, I think it's harder for me because I work in the church,
right?
And I work as a DRE, and so I'm involved in that work all the time.
So he just wants to go home and watch TV.
I don't necessarily want to go home and pick up the catechism again and start pounding away. So there's a different temptation for me too.
Yeah,
in that, or I don't necessarily want to pick up a workshop at Saint wherever near the edge of the diocese and take that evening and drive out to out to Greenville, which is. And then come home later. So there's different temptations.
Absolutely.
For me too. In my defense,
I'm not diminishing your work at all. Like I said, it's a tremendous work that you do, and I think everyone knows that people who are working for the church typically are working at wages that are typically less than you're going to get in the public sector.
Yeah, but the benefits are great. The eternal benefits.
There you go.
You bet.
Yes. What's on the horizon for Catechetical Foundations? Do you have any other aspirations, any other ideas cooking in terms, or other guests you're going after?
There's always ideas. It's the time. Going back to occupation. Time only allows. There's only so much time in a day. Right? So I think we've simplified what we're doing to a few key items that we're going to do very well. We're going to continue Authenticum until we're told not to anymore. We love it. I like it just as much as any guest. It's just candy every month, intellectual candy, or bacon if you prefer that. And then the Day for Catechists, which is a Saturday in June, that's going to always remain. We really think that's a good event. It's well attended. And then this Newman Tract, we'll probably develop a few different modes of that. We have some online courses as well. There's links to those through catfoundations.com. Those are the three things we're going to keep doing. The online courses, you can make maybe a fourth item, but those are wrapped up in the Newman Tract as well. But you can do those independently. We want to do those things and do those very well. And that takes up a lot of time. And I think that's where we're going to be for the time being.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing a 5-week series with the parish as well, one day a month for the last 4 months now.
Okay.
And I got one more meeting with them, so we do some of those as well as time allows.
This last year we've been in more parishes than any of the previous years combined. So I think as you do that work and you meet more people in the trench, and in a way you're able to affirm their work and assist them, and they see that as doable. Some of those invitations will probably be asked to come back, which happens, but they also tell others. And so, you know, what next year holds, I don't know, but I have a feeling that the schedule will be just as busy. So.
I think what we found out is the most beneficial for our parish, because we've had one parish in particular who's brought us out for, I think, 3 years, 3 years in a row now, 3-4 times a year. And it's to the point now where we need to sit down and say, let's develop a training tract for your team, rather than doing some of these, I guess, quick hit meetings, because then you can really sit with the material and slowly but swiftly work through it, and build and develop, rather than coming every few months and doing different topics.
Right.
And I would encourage parishes to do that and to think about that, or schools, to look at how are we going to train for the long term, because that's necessary.
Yeah, years ago we met with Bishop Wackowiak, and we sat in his office, and that was one aspect of our work that he particularly liked, was that the work itself is systematic. It allows someone to grow as a catechist in the right way, from one point to the other.
Right.
And ultimately, that's really what does it. And that was a reaffirmation for us when we brought him our work years ago, that's the right thing. And to persevere in that, because that's what the church asked for too. And she's our mother, you know, and you know, so that was a good reassurance for us, especially in this apostolate. Yeah.
Great. We're running out of time, but I want to ask you real quickly, if anyone wanted to help you guys out, I mean, I'm assuming some of these speakers actually get a stipend or something, or you pay for materials and food for these gatherings, as well as, you know, printing for materials and such.
Absolutely.
How can people help you out?
I was hoping you were going to ask.
You've got
30 seconds to
I
tell
got
me.
20 seconds. They can go to our website, catfoundations.com. They can call, or there's the address, and they can write a check to Cat Foundations. It's really that simple. They can show up at Authenticum and they can drop a donation in the box. It's that simple. So, and we love generous people.
Yes.
We really love generous people.
We run completely off donations.
Yeah.
So
Know that feeling.
Yeah.
yeah.
And some of our events are free. Some of the bigger events we don't charge anything. So those donations are critical to the apostolate.
Yeah. Well, I hope people will be generous, both with their finances and their time, and come by and prayers, of course, because you guys are doing tremendous work. So I want to thank you for being here.
Thanks, Alan.
I realize that you are busy
bless you.
gentlemen, and we really appreciate your time. And we appreciate your time as well, and we hope that you've enjoyed today's conversation, and maybe get some ideas of what you can do in your own diocese or parish or wherever you may be. In the meantime, we'll be praying for you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen.
Qui